Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, sitting down for one hell of an Xbox news update. It's been a very long time, probably since like the Halo Infinite monetization era, that we sat down for just a purely, we'll call it negative Xbox news update. And especially with them not really having many games to release as of this moment in time, yeah, like there isn't much to talk about on both the positive or negative front. So it's a bit of a change of pace here that today we're diving deep into one of Xbox's most significant upcoming games, Perfect Dark, where a report from VGC states that this game is not in the best position internally, where almost half the studio has left the building, a team of 80, and they have been whittled down to nigh 50, which is crazy to think about. So there's a lot of reading that's involved in this video. We're going to go through the article. We're going to break up the discussion into chunks as we continue to progress through that write-up. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Xbox Game Pass. We're going to end this on a good note because there is some good stuff on the Xbox front. But if you're new here, consider subscribing. Certainly when Xbox starts releasing things, we'll talk more about the latest and greatest in the land of Xbox. With that, ladies and gentlemen, for those who are not caught up on what's going on with Perfect Dark, you may remember this announcement here with this image where the Initiative, Xbox's brand new first-party studio of about 80 employees, was teaming up with Crystal Dynamics, where they said the teams couldn't pass up a chance to work together. We're still incredibly early in the development, but are excited to use this unique opportunity to deliver on the vision of Perfect Dark. I remember when I first read this news, I don't mean to throw this back in a super negative way, but this was the day before my dog passed away, so I was in like a foul mood. And it's very rare I carry my foul moods onto the internet because I do a decent job of controlling my emotions, but that was one of my weaker moments. So when I look at this Initiative stuff, I'm like, oh God, that's just a flashback I don't want to think of because I had a good point that I got muddied because I was super salty. When I saw this, I remember going, isn't this kind of strange for a first-party development studio to be handing off the work to someone else? Eventually, calmer heads prevailed, right? And we learned that the Initiative was going to construct these prototypes and hand them to effectively workhorses like Crystal Dynamics to make the game for them. So the systems, the design was all in place and finalized, and then Crystal was coming in and saying, okay, we're going to put the game together with you now. And that sounded pretty good. It sounded like a bright future for game development where the Initiative could just pitch a ton of different projects around the industry and have different studios make it for them, and suddenly they have a huge output of high-quality titles. It could work out really well. It seems like currently things aren't too well within the Initiative. So let's start off by reading what's going on through this VGC article titled Insiders Describe Fast and Furious Exits from Xbox's Perfect Dark Studio. Xbox's The Initiative Studio has seen a fast and furious wave of senior departures in the last 12 months, VGC has learned. As much as half of the core development team known to be working on the upcoming Perfect Dark reboot quit the company during the last year, or around 34 people, analysis of employee LinkedIn profiles has revealed. And you can even see right here, this long list of names. It's not even the full list because I couldn't zoom out enough, and I know you can't read them all, but look how many names are crossed off from the original team. That's how many people have moved on. And when you read deeper into the article, these are not just low-level positions that I'm not trying to downplay anyone's position, but it's not like just a random artist or, oh, it's just another gameplay programmer. Like, no, these are lead positions, such as most of the Initiative's senior design team, including game director Dan Newberger, design director Drew Murray, lead level designer Chris O'Neill, principal world builder Julian Myers, 2 senior system designers, a group of 3 former God of War designers, and more. And the turnover of top talent doesn't end in design. Perfect Dark's 2 most senior writers also recently quit, analysis shows, along with the project's technical director, tech art director, lead gameplay engineer, lead animator, QA lead, and more. According to LinkedIn, the Initiative is now less than 50 people when duplicates, former employees, and erroneous listings are removed, and currently has just 3 roles advertised on its website. Analysis suggests it hired around 12 people in the past 12 months. So let's hit the timeout there. There has been turnover in the studio, and turnover in the industry has been normalized. I don't fully agree with it because I have a different point of view as someone who's a big Bethesda Game Studios fan. I see that they can retain their employees for a while, and I think that should be the norm. You should create a great environment for your team and creative projects that energize everybody enough that they want to stick around for, in the case of BGS, decades. That should be the goal. That should be the norm in my point of view. I know not everyone shares that. However, turnover for the industry is considered normal. Almost half your studio leaving is not normal. And the reason I was really emphasizing lead positions here in the write-up is I don't want to pour it on too strong in this video, but I was doing a little bit of reading around because I saw a general consensus across fans. I saw some people making fun of me even. I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, this is going to be a negative thing blown up. And even back to when it was announced that the initiative was teaming up with Crystal Dynamics, like any skeptical point of view was met with this contentious, knee-jerk line of defense for a company that's never released a game. And I'm not saying pour it on, sound the alarms. This game can still be great. No one's saying that the initiative and Perfect Dark suck, or at least they shouldn't be. But the reality is that this is not good news. And a lot of people are trying to reposition it like it's not that bad. If a couple of people left, I'd be like, yeah, okay, we can argue you're maybe blowing it up. Even that I think would be somewhat alarming. Something worth discussing. Is something happening here? But when all of these leads are vacating their positions, trouble on the home front. Stop downplaying it. Stop protecting these teams. Let's have an honest discussion about it. Doesn't mean we have to agree, but there was just way too much pointing and laughing and going, it's fine. Again, I'm not going to say the game's going to suck, but this 100% warrants a conversation on what the hell is happening here. And just to make it crystal clear before I move on, because I did mention at the start of this, I saw some people teasing me. This isn't an effort to protect myself. I don't care what people have to say about me. I'm just going to always tell it how it is, how I feel. But yeah, when I saw like people posting comments about me saying, oh, I wonder what Xbox YouTuber is going to come around with a shocked face in the thumbnail saying this isn't good. Like, hey, congrats, Brainiac. You found it out that bad news is going to be responded to in a negative way. Well done. But this isn't me just trying to protect myself. It's more so just making people aware that I think the conversation needs to be a bit better around specifically the status of the initiative. Well, there is more information, so let's keep reading. The timing of the departures coincides with the September 2021 announcement that Crystal Dynamics had been signed to co-develop Perfect Dark. This, combined with few job roles currently advertised as the initiative, suggests that the Tomb Raider developer is likely taking a much stronger lead than first thought on the project. Interviews with multiple former senior developers cited a lack of creative autonomy and slow development progress as the reason for their departures, and described the wave of exits as fast and furious, with project momentum said to be heavily affected. The initiative's management told VGC it's confident in the team it has in place and that new talent is joining, and pointed to industry-wide staffing challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. Quote, it's no small task to build a studio and reinvent a beloved franchise, studio head Daryl Gallagher told VGC. In creating the initiative, we set out to leverage co-development partnerships to achieve our ambitions, and we're really excited about all the progress we're seeing in our relationship with Crystal Dynamics. In this journey, it's not uncommon for there to be staffing changes, especially during a time of global upheaval over the last 2 years, and there's plenty more work in front of us to deliver a fantastic Perfect Dark experience to our players. We wish all of our former colleagues the very best, and I'm confident in the team we have in place, the new talent joining, and we can't wait to share more with the fans, end quote. I don't know how many people agree with me on this, but I'm kind of getting a little tired of the pandemic scapegoat that we've seen for the likes of this situation here, as we'll talk about in a moment, E3, even though they were canceling it like way ahead of time with a third shot out in the vicinity and all this different stuff that was happening that was really disproving that like that was the reason that E3 was canceled and that they had this plan from way beforehand. People are working from home, so it's difficult to hire, I imagine, but to retain, I think not. I think that comes down to, of course, the vision, the design, and the autonomy, which I have some very specific thoughts on, so let's just keep going. The former initiative developers VGC spoke to attributed the waves of departures to frustration among senior talent over the direction of the project set down by Gallagher and game director Daniel Newberger, who himself left the company last month. Although the initiative's website claims that the company promotes a collaborative, creative environment, former employees described the studio's development hierarchy as very top-down, with Gallagher and Newberger keeping a strong grasp on creative decisions. According to former employees, many senior team members were frustrated by this perceived lack of autonomy and didn't feel heard on key issues such as development priorities, project planning, and team staffing. Gallagher and Newberger, who were previously the studio head and game director at Crystal Dynamics, wanted to make games the way they always had, with top-down direction, but sources said that many initiative employees were expecting a more bottom-up approach. As a result, it's claimed that the development has progressed painfully slowly, and a solid company culture never formed. All former employees VGC spoke to said they were surprised at how lenient Microsoft had been over the lack of progress. One person said, "Making games is hard enough, let alone when you feel like you can't get through to the people making the decisions that affect everyone." The culture issue was partly behind the decision to bring on board Crystal Dynamics, it's claimed, with Gallagher and Neuberger allegedly hoping that production would move more smoothly with the introduction of a second team familiar with their methods. Okay, so I said I had some thoughts on the design direction of this game. I know not many people will take it seriously until I have something to show for it. I respect that. I honor that. I just hope that people can at least understand, as someone who's in the middle of developing a game and has been very transparent with the process of what I've learned as someone who's very new to it, just passing on some of that, I don't want to call it wisdom because I'm not all-knowing, but some of that information. And if there's one thing I learned that can really stagnate a process in making a game, it's when everything bottlenecks to you at the top. Like in my case, as someone who's creative lead of my game, when all the decisions had to go through me, things slowed down because they had to go to me. I had to check them, make sure everything was good. And eventually you realize that you're nitpicking the little things that overall wouldn't matter in the full vision, and that it's much better to just trust the creative heads in your team, give them the, as the word they used here, autonomy to figure things out, to do it their way. And overall, if you have conveyed your vision of the game enough, which I feel I've done a good job of doing, then they will understand the overall goal and make it work within the design of the game, and progress will move along much more smoothly. You read something like this here where everything's got to go back to Gallagher or formerly Neuberger, and it's like, yeah, when everything has to be checked with them, there are probably days where the programmers, art directors, whoever, are just stopped. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to wait until this is verified, and you got to fight for everything. This is what puts games years and years out. I don't know how many people paid attention to Dying Light 2. That was a game that was in development for a really long time because everything had to cross a specific person's desk, had to be verified. People had to really fight for changes in the game. And hey, I love Dying Light 2. I thought that game was awesome. Going back to my original point that this doesn't mean the game's going to be bad, but studio culture is important. The timeliness of a release is something that not enough people talk about because we're in an era where we're very anti-crunch, which I very much understand. But with that, people have to understand there's a time for every video game. There's a window for every video game. And sometimes, like Cyberpunk, you lose your window. The window's gone for that game. I mean, the conversation for that next-gen version was just in one ear, out the other. People moved on within a couple of days when Horizon came out, and then eventually Elden Ring killed all those games. So there is a sense of urgency, completion urgency of tasks for development that I don't think a lot of the industry has a full grasp on. So for me, just reading this, it's like, I get it. There is a point in development where I think if you loosen that grip, from my experience, it makes things move much better, and you realize nothing was lost. You just got to trust the talent below you to do their job right. And if they don't, discussion, conveying that vision again, and figuring it out together. That's where you step in. So just some experience on my end I wanted to add in, but let's keep reading. There's still, believe it or not, more. Crystal Dynamics' introduction is also now likely to plug the gaps left by the initiative's staff turnover, VGC was told. VGC's sources agreed that they would be surprised if Crystal Dynamics' introduction, combined with the significant departures of core staff, hadn't triggered an effective soft reboot of Perfect Dark, and that it was likely still years away from release, which I think many of us expected. It's understood that Xbox's leadership team are prepared to be patient with their new first-party teams, which includes those currently working on Playground's Fable and Rare's Everwild, as they prioritize assembling groups capable of regularly producing the kinds of critically acclaimed prestige projects that come from PlayStation Studios like Naughty Dog and Insomniac. I found this part fascinating because I think, let's start from the top. It's great that Xbox has given them time to figure things out, but you look at sort of what happened with 343, where how long can that leash really go? Where 343 was just flopping around for a couple of releases with Master Chief Collection, which is now in order, Halo 4, Halo 5, and even to some extent now with the live service elements of Infinite, where Season 2 is coming out in May, but co-op got delayed, and there hasn't been much going on in Season 1. Like, Microsoft might have too long of a leash where they're not yanking the chain saying, like, hey, what's going on here? We need something. The reason why I find this fascinating is because I think it's good ultimately, but it conflicts with one part of their key service, Game Pass. You need releases that are more regular. You need people to hit things on the schedule. At the same time, though, you need to be patient. So you got to feed a service that does demand content, because that's what subscription services are all about, new. At the same time, though, you got to be patient, and almost so patient that companies have borderline destroyed their own reputation, where 343 will just, in my eyes, never reach that level that Bungie did with the Halo franchise. They just missed way too many times, and perhaps more Microsoft intervention could have helped that. There's also the idea that too much Microsoft intervention could hurt that. That's also fair. But I just found this perspective ultimately very, very interesting. On the note of that, Brad Sams, who had leaked the Xbox Series S, for example, so he's got pretty good sources, said, "I have heard this before from other studios. It appears that Microsoft is not trying to drive toxic culture. Not all that surprising, but from an industry where crunch time is the norm, swinging back to a more progressive management approach may be too far in the opposite direction for senior level retention. Maybe not a perfect analysis of the situation, but clearly there is friction." So some great insight there from Brad Sams. And overall, my too long didn't read of this situation is it doom and gloom hours? Is it time to sound the alarms and say this game's going to be bad? No, because they had a whole team from Crystal Dynamics working on it. But employee retention is important, and I kind of get tired of the downplaying of that, because, you know, senior level positions being vacated in mass, that's not normal. That's not okay. And that really puts on display like a significant level of displeasure. So I just hope that some people in the Xbox fandom can at least wake up, and again, I'm not saying you got to agree with me on everything, but just go like, hey, this isn't great news. And I feel like so many people have posed in the way of it not being that bad. It's like, it is bad. Hopefully it doesn't end horribly for them. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But for now, that is my verdict. It's not looking too hot there. But I said I wanted to end this on a positive note. Let's take a look at the March games for Xbox Game Pass, because one of them in there, your boy, is nice and pumped for this one. So we can see here that's coming soon to Xbox Game Pass. We have the Dungeon of Nahelbuk, the Amulet of Chaos Chicken Edition. Okay, but we got Weird West, the Notary Games, Shredders. We have F1 2021. We have Tainted Grail. We have Narco and Crusader Kings 3. I don't remember when Crusader Kings 3 was announced. A lot of people thought it was day one Game Pass, and they're like, no, it's not. We're never going to Game Pass, and then they eventually did. The game I got a shout out here, okay? Notary Games. Y'all know I love my JRPGs, and I love my visual novels. I don't talk about them a lot here, but I was really hitting home on how great it was to see Danganronpa there. And I love that Xbox is just finally getting there. I want them to have these games day one. That's the standard that needs to be set to grow in key regions like Japan and invest in them. As we saw with the Japan numbers, like getting exclusives there is the key to unlocking Japan, I think, now, because we saw what happened with the 360 era. But getting Notary Games there, if you are looking for a superbly written, at least the first two games, I'm not crazy about Time Dilemma, but the first two games, 999 and, of course, Virtue's Last Reward. Oh, good Lord, Virtue's Last Reward is one of my favorite Vita games. Now it's on Xbox. It was already on PlayStation. It was on Switch. So I love seeing this here. If you haven't played it, do yourself a favor. I'm just telling you right now, this is not spoiling anything. I still think about the ending to Virtue's Last Reward, and it's been 5 years. Like, that is one of the biggest mind blasts I've experienced in video game writing. I don't know how they came up with it. It's fascinating to me. It has my full endorsement. So please, if you are into visual novels, give this a look. It's also got puzzles in there. I'm not crazy about puzzles. I'm like many Zero Escape fans. I look up the walkthrough for the puzzles, and I just get to the story stuff because, like, it's so good. Like, for me, the puzzles are great, but I want to get to the next story bits because they're so interesting and there's so many choices. But also, Crusader Kings 3 is wild. So is Weird West. So a lot of good stuff here for Xbox fans to feast on. And then, of course, tomorrow we've got the Spring Games Spotlight. Overall, things are looking solid on the Game Pass front for Xbox, but that's all we've got in today's video. I know it was a very long news update, but I didn't want to spare any detail on any aspect of the discussion here for what's going on with Perfect Dark, because I feel like a full conversation is necessary. So thank you so much for lending me your time today. I know some of the videos we've been posting as of late have been really long. You know, I'm putting up 20+ minute videos left and right, and I'm thrilled to see the watch times going up. So thank you all so much again for lending me your time, listening to what I have to say. I'm just one sole man here on YouTube, and there's many other brilliant minds out there. So again, I'm honored. Thank you so much. With that, take great care of yourselves. Let me know what you think of the situation with Perfect Dark as well as Game Pass in the comments down below. And with that, consider follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members. Do consider supporting over on Patreon. The link is in the description down below. It fuels all of the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.